All right. Hi, everyone, and welcome. My name is Shayna. I am the managing director here at Host Agency Reviews. I am so excited to welcome our next webinar hosts from Brownell Travel. We have the lineup of all lineups here. So we have the Chief Development Officer, Kerry, Director of Partnerships, Katherine, Director of Marketing and Communications, Elizabeth, and Director of Advisor Development, Margaret. So just a badass lineup all the way around, which I love. So welcome, everyone. We're really excited to have you here. So today, the Brownell team is going to talk about how travel advisors often get caught up in one of two traps in building their business. The first trap, they're too focused on the selling, so making their business transactional and unfulfilling. On the other hand, in many cases, an advisor who has just joined the industry because they enjoy creating memorable travel experiences for their clients. To some, the idea of selling feels a little inauthentic. The second trap is of discomfort in selling that can stall momentum and limit healthy margins. So what if there was more to sales than selling? And they're going to share, oh my God, we're only at the beginning and I'm already the worst. They will share their expertise to give you the confidence you need to boost your business without sacrificing the client experience. So just as a reminder, before I hand this over, please feel free to post your questions in the comments. Abby from our team, who you all know and love, will be hanging out in there with you to catch as many questions as possible. She will also link to Brownell's directory so you can learn more about them. And if there's time at the end, I will jump back on. If not, we'll direct you where to go send your questions to Brownell. But without any further ado, I hand it over to the Brownell team and I'm going to jump backstage. So have fun.
Thanks, Shayna. We're delighted to be here. Host Agency Reviews is one of our most favorite partners in the industry. So I think I'll start just with an overview of Brownell, if you would allow me for 1 minute. Brownell is a host agency, and last year we had $265 million in sales with 140 advisors. So we are a medium-sized company. We are medium.
Did she freeze for everyone?
Oh no, I was thinking it was me frozen. Oh, Kerry.
No, that's okay. That happens. I'm sure Kerry will come back, but if anyone wants to jump in, I'm going to go backstage again.
Yes, I'll jump in while Kerry unfreezes. As Kerry and I are both in Dallas. My name is Margaret Haas Wolf. I am Director of Advisor Development, and we're both in Dallas. And for some reason, Dallas internet is awful. So I will pick up where Kerry left off. So we are, I would honestly say, a small agency in the grand scheme of things. There's a lot of big host agencies out there, and we feel quite small. We know all of our advisors. It's a very tight-knit community, and we've got a great team of about 30 people that support all of those advisors. We're headquartered in Birmingham, but our advisors are based all over the country. I see Kerry is back.
Yes.
I talked a little bit about our size. I did say I think of us as a small agency, especially in the grand scheme of the industry, but
probably
all over the country. But I'll give it back to you.
I tend to say medium but mighty, only because, boutique or small sort of speaks to something else, but in the realm of host agencies for sure. And the diatribe that I was going down was that when you consider $265 million in sales with 140 advisors, that averages out to $2.1 million in sales average per advisor each year. And to Margaret's point, the way that that's possible is because there's a team of 30 that are supporting these advisors. And so when you think about front of the house and back of the house, our advisor success team are the operations people. That's the insurance desk, the air desk, the sales desk, the tech team, everyone that is working sort of behind the scenes to ensure the success of the advisors. And then you've got the front of the house, which is the development team. And our team is made up of a 3-person marketing team that Elizabeth oversees, a 2-person partners team that is a co-partner team, Katherine and her colleague Austin, and then Margaret and Shay make up our advisor development team. So it's a lot of investment in the advisors that everybody benefits from, which we're super excited. So how do they benefit from them? Well, you benefit by bringing in sales, and a rising tide lifts all boats. And so our investment in our advisors is allowing them to have the most successful business that they can. And what's interesting is that when people come into this business, they don't come in because they want to do sales. That is not what leads them here. They come into this business because they have a desire to fulfill exciting and enriching travel experiences for themselves and for the people around them that they care about. Is typically how it starts. That's how they got the bug. And then it evolves into a full-grown business. And so what I think is interesting about the three women that I have with me on the call today is that all three of them have a background as advisors, which I think is really exciting and brings a lot to their role by way of empathy and understanding what our advisors are looking for. And if I could just do a quick show of hands, which of you consider yourself salespeople? None. Okay. So it's really interesting perspective because they were all successful advisors. And so they managed to close business, capture clients, have strong client retention, have outstanding partner relationships, and yet none of them are salespeople. So we thought that we should try to capture this in a bottle. And it all started, there's a book by David Hawfield, and it's called The Science of Selling. And I want to make sure to mention, because we use some of his words and his terminology. And so even though we started there, it was really sciencey. And so we evolved it into the art and science of selling. But I wanted to give a little shout out to Mr. David Hawfield, because this all began with his book as the foundation. And then we've just sort of made it our own. So the idea is that whether you're an independent travel advisor or you're a salary travel advisor, a lot of times people are looking to us saying, well, you're a host agency, it's all entrepreneurs. We are all entrepreneurs. But when you are in charge of a book of business, whether you are an independent advisor or a salaried advisor, it's the same idea as far as this process of development, business development, and client retention. And the thread through all of that is that selling is necessary for success. And I think that idea is uncomfortable for some people. And so that's why we have brought together this idea of how do we coach people into this idea of the art and science of selling. The basic philosophy of this is that an advisor can artfully arrive at a confirmation from the client, which means closing the sale, booking the trip, by scientifically influencing their buying decisions. So let me just say that one more time. An advisor can artfully arrive at a confirmation from the client by scientifically influencing their buying decisions. And this sounds super weighty, but I promise you it's not. All it is refining a process that is inherent in most people who are driven to customer service. It's funny, we just had a whole conversation today in our Slack channels about not considering themselves salespeople. And one woman who's a successful advisor came from being a social worker. Another one of our super successful advisors was a preacher. Another one was a therapist. And so it's this whole idea of listening, engaging, and coaching and earning trust from your clients that's going to lead you to the next place. So honing in on the art of selling, that includes the skills and the tactics related to your personal approach to sales. This is your design, your style of working with clients with the intention of gaining commitments and making the sale. So two things we know: people buy from people. And yes, there's that whole AI thing, and that's a whole nother webinar. But at the end of the day, if someone's entrusting you with $30,000, $50,000, $100,000, not to mention that 10 days of their time with their family, which is almost more important than the money, they buy from people. And people do business with people they like and people that they trust. And so three elements of that is listen more, talk less. Your mom told you that from when you were teeny tiny. Harken back and remember that. Listening leads to understanding. So mutual understanding from you of what your client is looking for, and an understanding from the client of you of what you're capable of offering and the expectations that they should have of this collaboration that you're going to do together. And then the final takeaway from that is that you're building rapport, you're building trust, you're creating a relationship with these people. Something that I think is super interesting, a statistic that came out of that book, was a study that they did, and it was extroverts, introverts, and ambiverts. So we all know what extroverts and introverts are, and the ambivert is the person that's somewhere in between. And when they did this study, the extroverts, who you would think are the natural salespeople and the ones who are going to potentially be a little bit more aggressive and have better close ratios. Actually, the extroverts and the introverts had nearly the same closing results, but the ambiverts, the intermediate between the extroverts and the introverts, average sales close was nearly 70% higher. Why? Because they were more focused on listening than talking. The listening allowed for understanding, like we said, two-way exchange necessary for building rapport and gaining trust, and identifying what the client's needs are so that the advisor can come to them with the solution. Another really important part in the art of selling, this way that you're designing your style, is confidence in yourself and the ability for you to know that I do know what I'm talking about. I deserve to be in the room. And that is really important for a client in gaining your trust, or you gaining the trust of the client, excuse me. And here's something to think about. Even if you're new to selling travel, you already know more than your client does as it relates to the planning of travel, the sourcing of travel, the confirmation of travel itineraries, the partners that you have across the world, the boots that you have on the ground. They may be super duper world travelers, but what you're bringing to the table is a little bit different and a little bit more expertise that you can bring to the table. The other super duper important thing is that you're surrounded and supported by colleagues and countless partners around the world who will help you be knowledgeable and design those experiences. So I want to start off, Katherine, who you all met. She's our director of partner relationships. She's been in that role for 5 years. But prior to that, as I mentioned, she was a travel advisor for over 8 years. And my question to you, Katherine, is when you joined Brownell in 2012, as a selling advisor, did you have any sales experience?
No, I did not. I had no sales experience. If I'm being honest, probably no relative experience. But I think what Brownell really figured out a long time ago is that the role of the advisor, the trusted advisor, as you've said, is really rooted in service. It's not necessarily rooted in sales. So what I did have in lacking experience, I had a heart of service and really customer care. So that's really where it started for me. And I think that's very true of most travel advisors. They have that heart of service. They really want to be a part of these moments for their clients and be in a relationship with them. And they hear the word sales and they get really scared, as I would know. But there really is so much of this role that goes beyond sales. Really, if you dig into we call it the Discover More process. It's a 5-step process, and very little of it focuses on sales. It really focuses on how you, from the very beginning, how you listen, how you care for the client, how you keep the client engaged, and how you share with them in the end. So, I think, like you said, if you do have that heart of service and that focus on customer care, then really any person can find confidence in this role.
Okay, so you're brand new to the role. You probably hadn't been to India or Africa, and so you're coming into this role. So how did you gain confidence in that you could be knowledgeable and that you deserve to be there and you had something to bring to the table for your client?
Well, I had not been to India. I had been a lot of places, but also not been a lot of places. But I was really lucky because I worked alongside my mentor, one of our former owners, and really one of the industry greats, Meg North. And Meg didn't need me to know anything about India. Meg knew about India. She'd been 7 times, at that point, probably 10 by now. And we also had these great long-standing partnerships in India that really were the true experts. So yes, we trained on destination and we trained on product, but we focused a lot more on kind of the softer things. And that was how to listen and how to speak with confidence and asking the right questions. And even the science side of things, taking all that information and really being able to share that and implement that into what you are quote unquote selling. And so, having all of that wisdom really, and learning by osmosis, it just really relieved me of the pressure to feel like I had to know everything, because I didn't. And it gave me the confidence to speak to that client and really serve them really well. And, I think that in not trying to be the expert in a destination or a product or anything in particular, we say you become the expert on your client. So it's so important because, when a client is able to work with you on every trip, that relationship strengthens with every trip. You learn more about them. You hear what they're not saying, perhaps. You learn from your mistakes. And so I think you just, as the advisor, you have to get really confident early on in your role. No, I haven't been to India. Meg has, and I have these great partners on the ground, and I know you, and that's what's going to serve me well. And then once again, without that pressure, you're not selling even yourself. You're not selling India. You're not even having to sell yourself because you have that confidence that just exudes from having all the right things at your fingertips.
Tell me a little bit too, just leaning into your role now in partners, your thoughts on going to a partner. And, my guess is, I know a lot of our partners, but I would think partners in general in this industry, we're a pretty generous industry. And so would you advise as a new advisor, or maybe you're an advisor who's been doing it for 10 years, but you still haven't been to India, approaching the partner and saying, listen, this is all new to me, please advise. Do you think they'd be pretty receptive and generous to that?
For sure. No matter how many times you've been somewhere, if you don't live there and work in this destination every day, you're not the expert. And they are. And this is their livelihood. They are folk, the world, they know India. And so I think they also just, like most people, it's a human business. They appreciate being acknowledged as the expert and you being aware of what you don't know and asking for help.
Well, and we actually talked about this, about the idea of expert sort of also means that you've stopped, you've peaked, you know it all, it's done, you can check the box. And in what we do, first of all, that's not possible. You can be the expert in your client, but you always need to continue to ask the questions and learn more, because even your clients' needs change, the age of their parents, the age of their children, where they are in their lives, their health, their physical, whatever. And so sometimes expert makes it feel like it's a dead end. And that's not the point. You should constantly be evolving and know. Okay. So tell me your roles in sales, your experience as an advisor working with clients. How has that shaped what you do today and the role that you have today?
Well, I think what all of us at Brownell are really proud to have created is sort of this community, as we call it, but this ecosystem that's very similar to what I experienced being in the office, and learning from all those people. That's not typical of travel advisors. Most are at home, they're by themselves. They might have a team, but they're not working in an office and they're not hearing people sell or learning from them. And so we've really been able to, with the help of Slack, which is what we use as our internal communication system, we've created this opportunity for advisors to really share and lean into one another. And so they might not be listening to each other on the phone, but they can jump in and say, oh my gosh, I just got a cruise request. I've never sold a cruise. And somebody else can say, oh, my whole business is cruising. Let me help you, or I've never sold Japan, or I've had this client issue that has never happened to me. And they're like, oh, it's happened to me. It's happened to me. I can jump in and help. And so you've got all these really smart people that are not worried about being the expert on anything, and they're just able to share and support one another. And On top of that, we've also been able to evolve and refine our partner program, which has been around for a long time, but we continue to evolve it and make it even more intentional and curated. And again, it's removing that pressure for the advisor to know every Italian partner and what they do and how they're different, and it really it narrows it down to, instead of 100, it's maybe 10. And it's so focused. Our technology is able to show them, their sweet spots, what their requirements are, what budgets they work with, and they don't have to remember all that. And so again, it's just us being able to share with each of these individual entrepreneurs from the very beginning, and give them all of these great tools so that they really honestly have the best head start and feel really confident.
I love it. Well, and it's interesting because that's going to lean into a lot of what we're talking about next with Margaret, who leads all of the training for our new to industry people, our sort of new to industry people, and even our existing people. As we so wrapping up this idea of the art of selling. So the art of selling, just to sort of recap, is that it encompasses the nuances of your clients and your selling techniques. It is this thing that you are crafting that is uniquely you, that you are bringing to the table, of why someone is choosing to work with you instead of choosing to work with a different advisor. And that culmination is really important, and trust and belief and confidence in yourself of that culmination. Okay, so the next part is the science of selling. And this is a little less subjective because, again, David Hallfield in this book determined that the brain uses emotions to assign value and mark something as good or bad. And so the brain, it's how the brain distinguishes between what matters and what's irrelevant. And so while it's the brain, emotions have a really big part of it. And the emotions of the buyer play a significant role in the decision-making process because emotions shape perception. And as we all know, someone's perception is their reality. And so what you're looking to do is use what we understand about people and how the brain makes decisions, that people respond to influence more than they do to direct selling. People don't want products or services pushed on them. They want solutions based upon their expressed needs and preferences. So top salespeople influence their clients by presenting information that's relevant to the client. Give them what they want. And so how do we know what they want, Margaret? And you're one of the ones who really, really believes in the idea of being an expert in your client, not an expert in the industry. And so knowing that your sales actually were icky sales, right? You were in hardcore, hard sales, cold call selling, gross. And then you moved to selling for a tour operator and now Brownell. So give us a little bit of your thoughts on sales in the travel world.
Yeah, absolutely. So I didn't last long in the hard sales of software because it brought me no joy, and I did pretty quickly realize I need to be selling something that I care about. But I spent several years selling for a tour operator where I was a specialist in a particular region, and that is the business model, which I do think has merit. But when you're an independent advisor or an advisor managing a book of business and selling the whole world, it is funny because advisors that join us and most new advisors kind of come in thinking that we're going to teach them how to sell and how to lean into a particular destination or just how to convince people that they are the expert at each of these destinations. So kind of what I'm going to talk about as we go on, we'll touch on a lot of what Katherine already mentioned, but we'll kind of hone in on it. And Kerry, you teed me up very well that part of our logic and what really is different than what people are expecting when they come into training is that we do not teach on sales. We teach on an approach that really flips the whole sales process on its head. And Katherine has mentioned it, as did you, Kerry, of we focus on the client first. It is kind of a simple solution. And I think for a lot of people, it feels unnatural. You want to go right into the the details of the trip. When are you traveling? How many people are traveling? And while that is possible, you can do a sale that way. We have found that the secret sauce is in focusing on that client and who they are, why they're traveling, what's most important to them. And then you get into the trip details, and you've just got a way better foundation for your relationship with the client. And so we'll definitely talk about that a lot more. But we just did a deep dive recently. So we have our Discover More process. Many agencies probably have something similar. Ours is kind of put in a bottle from looking at advisors like Meg North that Katherine worked with, and figuring out what makes them so successful. And we talk about it with new advisors. We talk about it in theory all the time. And then I realized that it was maybe time for a deep dive with our existing advisors and some newer advisors. And so at our last company meeting, we did a full deep dive. It was like 2 hours, which I didn't think we would use that whole time. I was not quite sure, but it ended up being a really rich conversation because it was a great refresher, because it is kind of a muscle that you've got to work of focusing on this, because it's easy to fall back into working on and going right to the trip details and trying to make things really efficient. And so our advisors really enjoyed livening this back up, because this is also part of what invigorates you and helps you really enjoy the work that you're doing with your clients. So that was a really long answer to your question, but
no, you got to it though, because that idea of sales versus being an expert in your client, and we've touched upon Discover More, and that could be a 3-day seminar. So right. in your opinion, what is the key? What is, if you could pull out 1 or 2 things of what makes that process so successful, what would that be?
Yeah, absolutely. So the biggest, there's 2 parts. I think firstly, as I mentioned, flipping the call on its head. So this is really that rich call that you're having with your clients about their trip, ostensibly. But instead of starting there, flipping the whole thing on its head and focusing on the client and who they are, why they're traveling. I mean, the guidance that you would give a client if they just tell you they want to do 2 weeks in Italy, the guidance you would give a client for a honeymoon versus maybe a cancer-free diagnosis or an anniversary, or maybe it's, anything else. There's so many reasons that one might travel. Maybe they've just gotten a divorce and they want to really go out and celebrate freedom, whatever that may be. The guidance you would give is so different. And so the why really matters, but also why do they travel in general? Is this for them as a family to get back together and spend more time together? And is it for them to educate their children on the world, or is it for them to relax and they have way too much going on at home? And so this is their getaway. That all changes the tenor of the trip. And you don't.
So you're saying it's not about Italy, actually.
Right. It's not about Italy. And it may be that Italy's not the best place for them to go. And you don't get that if you jump right to where do you want to go in Italy. But if you back up and you learn a bit more about them, and that information, to Katherine's point, that travels from destination to destination. When you get to know that client and you get to build on it trip after trip, but it keeps going with them. And so you get to be the expert in the client, which you don't have to know about the destination to do that. But starting with the why is crucial, and focusing on the client first. And then the second part is, and this is what we spent a lot of time on last week as well with the advisors, is because many have kind of talked about, you lose clients somewhere in the middle, and they kind of stop responding, or maybe they end up telling you and kind of picking apart the trip, or telling you what they want and the what abouts, the what ifs, and all of that. And that can really derail a sales process and slow down your confidence and your ability to drive the conversation. And so the second part is that this process, our Discover More process, but also just having a defined sales process, does set the drumbeat for your client. And for any of you that are parents, you know that children love structure, but also adults love structure. And if you set the drumbeat and you're kind of clear that you're in the driver's seat, you're listening, but you are moving things along, it really helps the client relax into that trusted relationship. And the 2 parts really feed each other, and it helps advisors to get to where they can do what they love, which is helping people and offering that customer service and that client experience, and you're getting to lean into these long-term relationships versus having to sell. And you're actually able to like let that go. And that's really the key, is that you can let the sales go, and that ends up feeding your success. On this, Kerry, if you'll kind of let me monologue a little bit.
I would love it.
Because I think there's a reason we spent 2 hours on this last week with advisors, some that are brand new, and many in the room have $10 million books of business, or 5 million or 2 million. There was a whole kind of breadth, and everybody was really engaged. And I think what might be helpful is if I kind of go in a little bit more detail on the Discover More process, and then we'll talk about the drumbeat, because I think that can be kind of confusing if we're talking about both things of listening to the client versus driving that sales process. So on the Discover More process, when we have new advisors come in, I see this light bulb go off that's really fun, of that you can let go of the concept of the sale, because that's probably not why you got into this. This industry is not famous for its amazing pay. Most people are in this because they love it. But I do think that you can create a successful business and have healthy margins. This can be a real career. And one of the freedoms of it is that your role is to advise the client and not to sell. So actually where you gain a lot of trust sometimes is by not selling to the client in that case, or telling them this isn't the right pick for you. And actually, I think we could accomplish what you are looking for in this other place. Or, I'm not the right person to book this for you. I think this would make sense for you guys to book directly, or something like that can really put you in a position that the client wants to come to you and wants to share more and more with you. I have it handy, is The Trusted Advisor, is one of my favorite books that has been really helpful in kind of unlocking this logic. But I really think this is the secret component that allows advisors to do this for a long time and to love what they do. Because when your clients trust you, which is earned, you do have to earn that over time. It's not a sexy, quick solution. You do have to work on this over time and go slowly. I often feel like people, if they're struggling with their sales, are looking for a quick fix. And I'm sorry to break it to you that this is not that. But I actually think it's much more effective, and it's kind of freeing. But when your client trusts you, both you and the client and your partners, your hotel partners, your on-sites, all of that, you have a much happier relationship. Everybody's going into things looking for the best and looking for the excitement and the experience. And you give each other a lot more grace for when things do go bump, because also, as we all know, even if you plan things meticulously, suddenly there's a strike in France and you've got to manage that. And that's nobody's fault. But if you've got trust between all of you, then you're able to move past that and not have it mar the trip at all. And also, when clients trust you, they're more willing to give you more leeway with their investment. So if somebody feels like you are going to take care of the money that they've set aside and the time, I mean, this is a huge investment to take many of these trips. If they trust you, then they are willing to be more honest with you about the full bounds of their budget. We all know the budget conversation is so tricky, but if somebody trusts you and they know that you've got their best interest at heart and are not trying to hard sell them, and that happens over time more and more, but that they'll really be honest with you about, okay, this is really what we can do, but we'd rather stay close to this number. But if something's really special, then maybe we can do an upgrade. And then they'll trust you when you tell them this is worth it. Yes, strikes in France are for real. The French do love to strike. It's part of their culture. So I do think that if you're able to move the clients with you and you're steering that conversation, which we'll talk about next, then they come with you and they are willing to be honest and share and give you their feedback. And then you get more and more chances to get closer and closer to the mark and to just keep building on this trusted relationship. So giving yourself the freedom of not having to sell and really to advise is part one. And that's what the Discover More process focuses on. And then the drumbeat thing, I think that this feels, again, surprising because it almost sounds counter to what I was just talking about, but it actually feeds the trust with the client, is that if you are setting the cadence of these conversations, then your client trusts that you have them in mind, and that you are going to take care of the next step. So they are not on high alert thinking that something's getting lost or getting forgotten in the shuffle, which can cause a client to then start researching a ton on their own and getting into these rabbit holes and trusting, Google AI that's going to give them the best answer, when we all know that a real person that's on the ground is probably going to give them the best answer. So if you're able to drive that cadence, and what that means is every time you hop off the phone, sending a follow-up email of what's going to happen next. Actually, before you get off the phone, telling the client, this is what I'm going to go work on for you. Taking the time to recap what you've heard from the client, showing your work of all that you've listened to and what you are going to go then incorporate into the trip and into the work that you're working on. It shows your work. It gives them an opportunity to clarify if you have actually missed something, which saves you a lot of time in the long run. And it really emphasizes how hard you are working on this and how custom everything is, if that is the kind of work that you do, or how much research you're doing. If you are, if you're working on cruises, that still applies. This is what I'm looking for you, is this size of cruise, this size of ship, these kind of amenities or whatever it may be. And all of that. So setting up, showing your work, telling them what's going to happen next, and then walking them through when you give them a proposal, showing them your work again, and then telling them what to expect as far as the rest of the sales process goes, explaining that I don't have anything on hold and this is live availability. That's good service to your client. That's not hard sales. That is accurate, that this is the moment. This is what is available at this very moment. And so if you are interested, if this looks great to you, I would love to go ahead and get this squared away. We can continue to make edits as needed, but that's not pushy. And I think people are scared to share that, but that actually builds trust with your clients, because then they're not surprised if they take 3 weeks to get back to you that something may be gone. And so it's kind of both handed, but it allows you to be honest with your client without feeling like you have some kind of end game.
Well, and I would say, Margaret, too, this is really the sales process. This is really the sales funnel. So for those who have come from sales, myself included, this is the sales funnel. So just hearkening back that what we are doing is selling.
Yes.
It's just that the approach shouldn't feel like sales, and that you will get greater results by it not feeling like sales. And I think what Margaret is speaking to is this idea of shepherding your client through this process to get them to the place where they want to be, which eventually is where you also want them to be.
Right. Exactly. And then you're able to build on this over time. Your clients learn that this is the rhythm. And so then you get a smoother sales experience each time you come back to it, because your clients know what to expect. And that also helps set you up for success in choosing the partners that you want to work with. And those fewer snags that you hit along the way, the faster you're able to work through that client and work on the next one. And the client feels cared for, you have enjoyed what you're working on. And then the partner gets a well-prepared client when they actually arrive in country on the ground. So that was a lot. I feel like I just word vomited on.
You did it. It was a lot. It tracked. It really did. I promise. Okay. So just even to make things more complicated.
Yes.
This is all well and good, and it's great. And what you've explained is a beautiful process. Tell me so what of how this plays into margins, because yes, we are trying to close a sale. Yes, we are trying to get the client to take the trip, and it also needs to be profitable for you to have a successful business. So how does client care tie into trip margins?
Yes, it is all well and good to be squishy and sweet and best friends with your clients, but it actually really, everything that we've talked about really contributes to healthy margins, and our advisors are a great testament to that. Is this process works on a lot of levels. It builds trust, it builds enjoyment, fulfillment in what you're doing. And if you are doing this correctly, listening to your clients, IDing the right clients for you, and saying no to the clients that are not the right client for you, then you are building a book of business that that trust you and that won't be spending your time going back and forth with you because they don't trust you. You close how many times you need to go back and forth with the partner because you've listened well. You also are stronger in the choices that you've made because they're based on something. They're based on something about the client. And so you can show your work and the clients trust that. And so your opportunity to close the business sooner it's a much shorter window when the clients are following your lead, they're on the drumbeat, and they are also not taking as much of your time to go back and forth, which, as we know, the more we go back and forth, the more we touch an itinerary, those margins shrink because you're going back and forth and you're pulling things out, which means you're also pulling out the integrity of the itinerary. The best itineraries are the ones that have been put together. They are succinct, they are thorough, and the partner gets to just execute and the client gets to be along for the ride. And those are also the ones where you make the best margins. And again, the clients come home happy. I think that's the thing of this is it's not one or the other. You are then executing on a client's investment and they are getting what they paid for. And on top of that, when you have repeat clients and referrals as well, but repeats, I was saying earlier that they then trust you more with their investment. They're willing to be a bit freer. They know that you will deliver on what they have invested with you. And so they are willing to be more clear and also a little bit looser of what they want to spend with you. And that, of course, allows you to maybe increase the room category or do more custom touring or something like that allows you to make a little bit of extra money. And again, they trust you that they're going to come home and be thrilled. So this really is, if it's managed properly, all of this is a self-feeding repeat engine and a self-feeding referral engine. And so you do not have to spend as much time out there pounding the pavement trying to get new clients, nor do you have to spend as much time trying to convince clients to work with you, which again allows you to have more clients and have healthy margins along the way.
And by showing that care and the advisor role, it also plays into charging planning fees,
yes,
which of course is a whole nother webinar.
We didn't even get there.
But yeah, and then that goes back into confidence as well. I worked with Katherine when she was an advisor, and I know she had some significant planning fees that were worth every single penny of what she did. So
absolutely.
Yes. Thank you for that. I also think, harkening back when you were talking about choosing the right partner, no trip to France or Italy is the same, and you will probably choose a different partner based upon the demographics of the client and the trip. And so it's all very, very careful of that. Thank you. So as I want to go back to that idea in the science of selling, of influencing. People want to be influenced. They don't want to be sold to. And there are two routes of influence that the brain is going to absorb. And they are the central route and the peripheral route. So the central route is what you're saying. It's presenting a compelling product or service. It's presenting the right destination at the right time of year with a villa instead of a hotel room, or a hotel room instead of a villa, or a cruise. The peripheral route is how you're saying it. And this is, how are you speaking to me in either my tone, my language, for me to understand that you have heard me and you know where I'm going, again, in this effort to build rapport. And so this, to me, just undeniably is marketing, which is a critical component of influencing and selling. And so Elizabeth Roberts, marketing and sales are often lumped together. What do you think about this? Should they be lumped together? Do they have different definitions? Help us through this, please.
Yeah, absolutely. They are so often lumped together. I feel like, especially in a big corporation, I mean, you usually hear the sales and marketing department, but I think they are fundamentally different. And especially in our industry, I so often hear from advisors that they don't want to do marketing because they don't want to come across as salesy. And I just don't think that's really accurate, because I think marketing is really inviting someone to get to know you and your company, your brand, the products that you do sell, building that trust by doing consistent messaging. I think that really is marketing, whereas sales is getting to know the person, their needs, their preferences, and getting to the how can you fulfill their wishes. So I really do think they are fundamentally different at the end of the day, especially in this industry where we are building trust and we are trying to communicate a brand and kind of the breadth of your expertise and what you can do for a client. Oh, you're muted.
I'm on mute. I knew it as I was doing it, and I was like, oh, dang. Dang it. I swore I wasn't going to do that. Okay. So tell me this. Because, we talk about the sales funnel, but there's a marketing funnel, so to speak, that people talk about. Where does sales fall in the marketing funnel?
Yeah, so I really do think the marketing funnel is more of actually a circle. I don't like calling it a funnel in this industry because it really is continuous, right? Like,
yes.
Hopefully your clients aren't just going to plan one trip with you. I mean, that could be the case, but they're always going to be an advocate for you if they've had a good experience with you. So I really like to think of it as more of a circle because it doesn't end at the end of the trip or at the wrap-up call or something like that. So, sales, to answer your question, really falls between consideration and conversion. So if you think of a typical marketing funnel, it starts with awareness. So that's kind of the big one at the top is getting to know you and your brand. And then as you kind of get further down, consideration, conversion, loyalty, and advocacy. But again, I really think that goes back into a circle, and sales falls somewhere between that consideration and conversion piece. And you can map different marketing initiatives to different pieces of this funnel or circle, whatever you want to call it. Instagram, for example, might fit somewhere better for you and your clients than in other places. So I think it really benefits the advisor to sit down and kind of think about their clientele, think about their process, and think about where each of these marketing initiatives comes into play within their own funnel.
Well, it's interesting that you were saying about Instagram. I think you have a good philosophy too on fish where the fish are. So if your demographic is not on Instagram, then don't parlay necessarily, don't put all your eggs in that basket. Or can you talk a little bit more about that idea of fish where the market where the fish are?
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that we tell all of our advisors, especially our new advisors. I think there's so much pressure to, be perfect on Instagram, have everything perfectly branded and perfectly, altered to you and your brand. And while that is important, I think it's more important to get something out. You want to just keep yourself top of mind, keep your brand top of mind to your audience. And so while there is a lot of pressure to be on Instagram, I think it's more important to do exactly what Kerry said, fish where the fish are. If your audience isn't on Instagram, if you're not on Instagram personally, don't feel the need to get on Instagram. There's so many things that you can do that are marketing without having to be on Instagram. For example, we have an advisor that I was talking to recently who's really doubled down on LinkedIn. Like that is where they were a former corporate professional, and that is where their audience is. That is who they're communicating to. And they've had a great success doing that. But it could be snail mail. It could be in-person events. I mean, marketing takes a lot of different forms. And I think it is just important to do something that you're comfortable with, that you can get into a good rhythm of doing, because you're going to want to do it consistently. So I think that's most important, is to stick with what you're doing and be consistent about it. I know that in there, it's hard to be consistent when you're busy planning trips, but that staying top of mind is just so important in this business. You never know when someone's going to be sitting around the dinner table wanting to take a river cruise with 8 people, and then you send something out. Maybe it's about river cruising, maybe it's not. Maybe it just prompts them to reach out. So that continuous staying top of mind is so important.
Where do you start? I mean, it's so overwhelming. So it is for me personally, it is the thing. I'm very much a do what I say, not do what I do. When it comes to marketing, I know what you're supposed to do, but I don't do any of it. So for someone who continues to put it on the back burner, what is your advice on where to start and how to begin to incorporate this into just your day-to-day business?
Absolutely. I think just start small is my best advice. Start with something you feel like you can do consistently. Like I was just saying, that doesn't need to be Instagram, but it can certainly be Instagram. Maybe you start posting 2 or 3 times a week. One piece of advice I give our new advisors is to just block some time, take a Friday and block 2 hours and just start doing something small and do it every week so that you get into that rhythm, because it's like habit building in your personal life. Once you get into that habit and get that muscle memory of doing it, it's going to become a lot easier. But also take advantage of what your agency provides. If they provide you with marketing material, we provide our advisors with white label content every month, emails, social media, and other things. But if that's what you start with, then that's what you start with. If you want to build out from there, that's great. But just start small. Start with something that feels manageable and that feels like something you can do consistently, so that you do get into that good rhythm and build that muscle memory and start building trust with those clients through whatever marketing tactics that you want to take on.
Can I just tee you up really quickly, only because obviously we work together every day, so I know this story, but it seems to fit so well on the two things that you just said of, you never know when someone's going to be at the dinner table talking about something, and lean into the marketing that's already available to you. I think some people think they need to stay away from white label marketing because it may feel too generic, but if the white label marketing is done correctly, it is still going to be inviting and appealing. And it's coming out, it's consistent. So we have a story. We have two recent stories of advisors of cruises that booked. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. We had one actually back to back, which is so awesome. But we had one in January who sent out a newsletter, and a few days later landed $120,000 cruise booking directly from that newsletter. Someone replied to it and booked a cruise. And then the second one was in February and got a booking 6 minutes after the newsletter was deployed. So really two back to back. And it really, and I don't think either were for the product or the partner that were in the newsletters, but it really just kind of prompted that client to reach out. One was a former client, and I believe one was a new client. So it really just prompted them to reach out and showed that, they were having that conversation. Who knows, they could have kicked the can down the road if that hadn't come, those advisors' names hadn't come through their inbox or to their social media or wherever it was. But it was really cool to see those two kind of happen back to back and prompt those clients to reach out.
I love it. Okay, so Margaret referenced this, and I think it's really important too, is this advice of a lot of our advisors get new business from referrals.
Yeah.
And so they're like, you know what? I get all my trusted people from referrals. I don't want to market. I don't need any new clients. I don't want any cold clients. Can you help bridge those two things together?
Yes, I hear this all the time, especially from some of our more seasoned advisors who have a great book of business. But I think the answer, goes to what I was just talking about. You never know when you're going to prompt someone to reach out, but it's also increasing your own client's lifetime value, right? Like you're communicating to them your value, other things that you can be doing. You never know when that upsell, not to use that term, but that upsell could happen, or, something prompts that client to reach out and to add something onto the itinerary. Or if we're talking about cruise, maybe they end up wanting to do an extension afterwards and stay and do a land portion of the cruise. So you never know when that's going to happen. And so I think, being able to increase your client's lifetime value is the reason you do marketing, staying top of mind and continuing to build that trust no matter where the client is in their kind of life cycle with you.
I love it. Okay, so wrapping up, I don't know if it's good or not good that we don't have a lot of questions. I'm hoping it's that we're super duper thorough, not that people are either asleep or, watching a new release of Ted Lasso coming out. But so let's just kind of tie a bow on this idea. And it's that the art and science of selling. The art is the personalized approach to the sale that supports the science in that people make buying decisions based on emotions, and that the way that you are getting to their emotions is through influencing that decision process. And when you blend the two of those, the art and the science, you establish relationships, which end up building trust, which ends up getting greater commitment from the client, and ultimately you increase your sales. So we hope that you enjoyed this part of it. And man, we'd love to answer some questions if there are any out there.
I do have some questions. So yeah, we've got about 5 minutes. Thank you so much. One of the things I love is I love hearing kind of the different areas of the business. So hearing from, advisor, from partnerships, from marketing. I think that that's super helpful to kind of get the full picture. So that's just my own personal comment, not a question. But I do have some questions. So one is you talked a lot about, I think, the discovery process. So what kinds of questions, or maybe like a top 2 or 3, do you find are overlooked in the discovery process that can give advisors more clarity with the researching?
Sure. What can you clarify clarity with the researching, as in?
Sorry, doing research for your client.
Got it.
Yeah.
One of the questions that I think Troy Hayes, who is the owner of Brownell, is one of his favorite questions, is asking people, what are the stories you want to tell when you come home? What is it that you want to be sharing with people after the fact, especially for family trips? That kind of pulls out what are people most looking forward to, what's going to mean the most to them. I also think I love the questions about, tell me about your favorite trips in the past. And it can be to anywhere, because a trip to Maine may tell you as much about how this family or this couple travels together as their most recent trip abroad. But I don't know if anybody else has one to say, right?
I was going to say, so to clarify, the Discover More process is not just the questions that you ask at the beginning. It's a whole process of the evolution of the trip. And so one of the two that I feel like get missed the most is Connect. And that is when the trip has been booked, paid for, but they don't travel for 6, 8, 9 months. And so it's, how do you connect with them? How do you keep them top of mind, and you send them some restaurant lists or some reading lists or something like that to really make them feel engaged and cared for. And then the last part of it is share, and that's something we often get too busy with to really hear how the trip went. The clients get too busy to share, and if you can really push them to get on the phone, or worst case, just send you some points. Again, it goes back to, this advisor really cares about me and I trust them. And it makes that next beginning of the next sale a lot smoother because they have that trust in you.
Yeah. I love what I have to say about, and I haven't necessarily heard those, that feedback, is I love how thoughtful all of those things are. I think that just the thoughtfulness behind it, that was kind of the first word that came to my head. Margaret, with your questions, but then Katherine also kind of with the continuous follow-up, which actually kind of goes into the other question that I have, which is, what are...
Wait, Shayna, sorry, can I just want to add one thing, because
please. Yeah.
The question was, what questions aren't people asking? And I think a number one answer to that is, who is the decision maker? Because oftentimes we are on the phone with either the person who loves to plan travel or the one who drew the short straw, who's in charge of the travel. And yet you've got another person who has an opinion on it because they lived in Italy 40 years ago on a school trip. Or you have the person who's writing the check, and grandma's writing the check, or mom's writing the check, and mom hates Italy for whatever reason. So I think that's probably the most overlooked question, is who is the final decision maker? And then when you find that out, the follow-up is to get that person engaged at one point in one conversation along the way, without a doubt.
I completely agree with that. I think that's super important, and also a question that we don't hear asked enough. I love that. Okay, we've got 2 minutes left, and Katherine, I'm going to kind of dive into what you had mentioned in the last answer, which was, one of the questions we have is, what are some touch points during the planning or booking process that do show genuine care? What are a couple examples of that?
Yeah, so I mentioned this is a whole step in our process. And another thing that we try to share. So it can be really tedious to come up with those things, like the reading list or the packing list. And so our community is really great about sharing those. We have a very specific, not surprising to you, place that we share them, and they can go grab them. So they're not reinventing the wheel each time trying to track these things down, and they don't miss the step because of that.
Yeah, I will speak to, we do our own incentive trips, acknowledging our advisors that are top producers. And so we're working on what those are now. So for, I can't say what they are because they haven't gotten them yet. I almost spoiled it, but we are working on, there's a trip to Rio, and we have a gift specifically crafted for that we're sending ahead of time. to wait it out. We have one going to Mexico. We have a very specific thing that we're sending for that. And we've got a trip to Scotland and a very specific thing that we're sending for that. And so it's helping build the anticipation of the trip. It could also be, something as simple as, I know your son is big into archery and you guys are going to Spain. And I just learned that there's a World Expo of archery that's happening. That costs you nothing. That's the other thing I think that Katherine was hitting upon when she was talking about reading lists, packing lists, recommendations. You don't have to spend money on it. So while I suggested gifts, it's just, I'm thinking of you, and here's a link to something to show you I was thinking about you.
I love that. Also, what terrible destinations you're sending your advisors to. How could you?
It's really tough.
Oh, no. That is all the time that we have. Thank you to everyone who's been here joining us. Thank you to all of you. I cannot wait to have you back. And this was such a pleasure. Thank you so much again. And for everyone that's still here, we are going to share again Brownell's link to Host Agency Reviews. Please go check them out, ask questions. Mm-hmm. If you have any concerns, come to us. We'll connect you directly to the Brownell team. So
thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of your week.
Bye. You too. Bye-bye.